Thank you for being here. Welcome for being here. I believe the election has already taken place, so I don't have to worry about making my campaign speech. This celebrates the end of the third year, I think, and the beginning of the fourth year of the Inn. A remarkable achievement. It is getting better every year thanks to all of you and the leadership that has been demonstrated so far. And for those who don't know, although I am president-elect, this organization does not run by the judges doing anything, which is why it is so well done. The real work is done by the lawyers, and they, to illustrate how smart they are, they let people think that the judges do the real work. So anyway, it is a great credit to all of those people. I would like to make sure that everyone recognizes and thanks the sponsors that we have. They're listed up here. They are Alston and Bird. I'm not sure I know how to say this. Buhan Fallagant? Bowen Fallagant. I'm not from around here. Hunter McLean, Exley and Dunn, Kilpatrick Townsend, King and Spalding, Morris, Manning, and Martin. So without their help, this organization cannot do things like this. So I think I'm through, right? And everybody's glad, so let me turn it over to the person who's doing the real work, which is Kathy Horn, our counsel.
Thanks. Let me mention, in case anybody has not noticed, we have a camera down there. And we film all of our events. And you can hear me okay, right? Okay. But what that means is that it would be very helpful if the people wouldn't be up and down all evening. If you need to go anywhere, the restroom anywhere, if you could kind of go to one side or the other, and if you're on this side, if you can get up and then go behind the camera, that'd be great. Now that's not a strict rule. Nothing's going to happen if anybody stands up, but we're just trying to make the best video, because these do go on our website, of course. Well, this is Owen, please go ahead and start your salads. As Judge Bonifeld mentioned, we've been around. It's actually kind of like 2 3/4 years, and this is our Inn's third annual dinner meeting. And in keeping with our long tradition and history, I'll keep the business portion of the meeting very short. So enjoy your salads while I'm talking. What we're going to try to do is go through the business section while you're having your salads, and then we'll take a pause, have our entrees, and then as soon as the entree plates have been removed and people can start their dessert, I'll introduce the speaker. We of course value and appreciate every person in this room and every member of the Inn, but I especially wanted to introduce tonight the judges who are here. And I'll be introducing other people, and so I would suggest that we not do any applause. We'll just do some introductions. And if you just kind of wave your hand maybe, but in no particular order, the judges that are in attendance tonight are Judge Ed Coleman, he's Southern District, Judge Mary Grace Deal from the Northern District, Judge Bonifeld, you've already heard from, Northern District, Judge Jim Smith, who you'll hear a bit from later, Middle District, Judge John Dallas, Southern District, and Judge John Laney, Middle District. And you'll kind of get this theme throughout the night. We've really tried to involve all three districts because we are a statewide Inn. I also want to acknowledge our 2 former counselors of the Inn. Jim Frenzel, who's at this table, was not only our first counselor, but as most people are aware, he was really the driving force and I'd say the founder of this Inn. And the president during his tenure was Judge Mullins, and that was Northern District, of course. And Jim was followed by Ward Stone from Macon. Here's Ward. And he guided the Inn through the 2015-2016 year, and his president was John Laney, Judge John Laney. Having been a counselor, the counselor of the Inn for the past year, I have a new and greater appreciation for what my predecessors did, and I very much appreciate that. I do want to mention one other person who can't stand the thought of being recognized or having her name mentioned, but we do have an administrative assistant for the Inn. She's sitting up here at the head table, and she'll probably crawl under the table when I mention her name, but Mary Ann Harper in the sort of turquoise, and she does get a round of applause. And I think a number of you are aware of the somewhat amazing issues we seem to have. We go through the National Inn of Court website for a lot of the things we do, like invitations. And I have to say, I think it's the worst website I've ever seen, and the technology is awful. Supposedly it's been improved, but when you get quirky things and all, don't blame it on me or Mary Ann. I mean, we blame everything on National's website. First, in order of things, we have a few words from Chief Judge Susan Barrett. She has served as the president of the Inn during my tenure, during the 2016-17 year. Unfortunately, she told me long ago that she wasn't going to be able to be here. She had a pretty important conflict. But she did send some remarks, and Ben Kay will come forward and read those.
Thank you, Kathy. Ladies and gentlemen, President Susan D. Barrett sends these greetings with her regrets that she's unable to present them to us in person. The mission of the W. Homer Drake Jr. Georgia Bankruptcy American Inn of Court is to promote a legal profession and judiciary dedicated to professionalism, ethics, civility, and excellence. As set forth in the mission statement, this vision is carried out by Inn members who inspire the legal community to advance the rule of law by achieving the highest level of professionalism, by example, education, and mentoring. The Inn's mission is the benchmark by which we assess our agenda, progress, and activities. Thanks to all of your hard work, both in the practice of your trade and your participation in the Inn, you continue to fulfill the mission of the W. Homer Drake Jr. Georgia Bankruptcy American Inn of Court. And individually and collectively, through your leadership and example, you continue to epitomize what is good about the legal profession. I am honored and proud to work with you. Thank you. Susan D. Barrett, United States Bankruptcy Judge, Southern District of Georgia.
Thank you, Ben. I can tell you that your officers and the committees, and we'll get into that in a minute, but have tried very hard this year to be fiscally responsible. I have said from the beginning I didn't want to turn over an Inn that the bank account was in the red, so we've been working on that. But Kenny Stone is our treasurer. That's a 2-year position. He will continue to be treasurer next year, and Kenny is somewhere and will give us a report. Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm pleased to report tonight that the finances of the Inn are in very good condition. To date this year, we have collected dues of $33,450. We've received $5,000 from our sponsors. Guest meals, $2,380, $200 in other income, for a total income this year of $41,030. Our expenses to date have been $33,100.47, meaning that we've had a net income of slightly under $8,000 so far this year. And our bank balance as of today is $24,577.28.
Thank you.
So we're in good condition.
Thank you. And we're in good condition in large part thanks to these sponsoring law firms. So please take note of who they are and thank the members of that firm when you see them. And one of our goals of the Inn is we want to make sure that members can attend every event without charge. And so far we've been able to do that. And now I'll call Walter Kelly, who will tell us about our officers for next year.
Thank you, Kathy. The masters have voted, and the officers elected for the coming year are the Honorable Paul Bonifel as president. Judge Bonifel ran on the platform that he would reduce the tithe from 10 to 8%. And the counselor is Grant Stein. President-elect is Judge James Smith from the Middle District, and I will be the counselor-elect. The treasurer is Kenny Stone, and Secretary Rob Williamson.
Thank you. And I do think those officers deserve a round of applause. And congratulations to all of you, and more importantly, thank you to all of you who have agreed to serve. And I will say, during my year, virtually 100% of the time, every time I ask somebody, could you possibly do this? Could you serve in this capacity? It was always yes, and that is greatly appreciated. Next, I am to give you the executive committee report. And Judge Bonifel talked about how the lawyers do all the work. Well, the committees do a ton of work, and the chairs of those committees are very special to the Inn. And I'm just going to briefly tell you who they are. Membership and Nominations Committee is chaired by Mark Maloney, Northern District, Steve Gunby, Middle District, and neither one of them could be here tonight, but they have really worked hard, and it's been challenging simply because we are so new. We're trying to figure out everything as we go along. At some point, it will roll where everything changes every so many years, but we've been struggling with some of that, and they have done a wonderful job. Let me mention that, we have different classes of membership. And the youngest class of members, other than the pupils, who are actually law students, are the young lawyers who are out in practice and have been practicing from 1 to 5 years in the field of bankruptcy. And some of us older lawyers have a hard time knowing who those younger lawyers are. And a lot of times, frankly, mentoring is such a big part of this Inn. A lot of times the people who really need the mentoring are the young lawyers who are not in the larger firms, because the larger firms have the ability to do their own mentoring. So I say all that to say that we really, really need to hear from you. We need your suggestions about people who might be prospective associates of the Inn. The mentoring committee is chaired by Jim Drake, Southern District, and Alex Sanders, the Middle District. And they have worked hard. What they've been doing is working with the law schools and getting law students who will then be pupils, and then they have mentors for each of the pupils. And if you missed it, I saw several people signed up, but there's a sign-up sheet outside if you'd like to be a mentor. And I hope if somebody calls and asks you to be a mentor, you will jump on it. It's a rewarding experience. Programs have been chaired by Grant Stein and Neil Gordon, and for those of you who have been attending the programs, they have done an excellent job. There's been a lot of good variety and interesting programming. Social committee is Joy Webster from the Middle District and Rob Williamson from the Northern District, and they've been in charge of the social component of every event. Every event has a social component. So you have them to thank for the good food and good drinks you've had at all the events. Technology and National Awards is Dennis Conley, who couldn't be here tonight. He's Northern District, and Dave Burry from the Middle District. And, you know, I've sort of already commented about the technology piece. They have done a great job and done, you know, everything from setting up the survey to getting the results to trying to help us figure out how to post our programs, because if you cannot attend, you're supposed to go to the website and watch the program. And they've handled all of that. Community outreach, the two co-chairs is Fife Whiteside, who's from the Middle District, and he has had some recent health problems. He was signed up, and he called me today and said he just couldn't get here. And Judge Coleman from the Southern District. And, of course, we had the very successful coat drive. Judge Coleman, after going through and decided how many he wanted to keep for himself, he ended up taking a lot of them to community agencies. And that committee is also looked at as considering some other projects. There's a pro bono committee headed by Steve Greenberg in the Southern District, Valerie Richmond, the Northern District, and they've initiated sort of, I guess you'd call it a pilot program in the Northern District, and we're reviewing options in the Southern District. And then finance is Kenny Stone, you've heard from, and Karen White. So the first 2 years of our Inn, as Judge Bonifeld said, have been, I think, a tremendous success. And it's only going to get better as we learn from our experience, because it is sort of trying this and trying that. There are not a lot of statewide inns, and especially in a state the size of Georgia. So I think we're doing real well. In fact, raise your hand if you have met, through your Inn membership, at least one bankruptcy lawyer you didn't know before. I mean, that's what it's about. That's almost everybody. And so we want continued participation, and when you get your invoices, it will ask about what committee you'd like to be active on. And now Grant Stein, who has been our program chairman, and he's the incoming counselor who's already been very hard at work on things for next year, will give you an overview of the events that are already in the works, and you may also want to hang on to your program and take it with you because they're in there. Grant? Here we are. Quick learner.
By the way, Kathy tells me there are cameras in one of the bathrooms, so in any event. We have put together, through suggestions and leadership from a lot of folks, a pretty good plan for the coming year. And let me talk about each of the programs briefly to put it in perspective. The first will be a video conference program similar to what was done when the Inn began, and that'll be on September 14th. That date was carefully selected to be after the Georgia-Notre Dame football game, which precedes it on Saturday, September the 9th. There are many members of the Inn, I understand, that will be in South Bend for that, and go Dogs. The second event we're going to have is October 19th, which is going to be an Atlanta event that we did this year, and that's jointly with MacBag. MacBag is the Metropolitan Atlanta Consumer Bankruptcy Attorney Group. They have been doing in the consumer area in Atlanta what we do in the Inn, but they've been doing it for about 20 years. And the synergy from bringing their group and our group together, last year it was a wonderful program. Neil Gordon, Nancy Whaley, and Janine Tree spoke, and we're looking forward to having another good program with great attendance this year with them. November 16, we're going to start something new. One of the areas that we have complexity with being a statewide organization is if people have to go to Augusta or go to Macon or come to Atlanta, it takes an extra effort, and we appreciate the extra effort. But we're going to decentralize this coming year, and we're going to have 2 social programs that will be by the mentors with their mentees in the district where you all reside, so that you don't have to travel. And that's perfectly acceptable, not to have it be everybody, but to have those days set aside to make sure that we get together socially. We're going to do one of those in November. We're going to do the next one in February. And in that regard, Alex Sanders and Jim Drake and Colin Bernardino have gotten us to the point where we do have mentees or pupils identified from all the law schools, plus the law clerks, the term clerks for all the judges. So we've got with them and the associates and then the mentors that'll get assigned, we're in good shape. In fact, the only law school that we don't have at this point, because Professor Sabbath wants to be certain about who he picks for Mercer is Mercer, but we're ahead of the curve this year in bringing that all together, which brings us to the next program, and this one was one that Judge Bonifel envisioned as he did with the social programs. Lest you think that the creativity comes from Neil Gordon and me, it doesn't. It comes from someplace else. And this one will be at Georgia State. We anticipate, Judge Smith, that we'll do the same thing at Mercer the following year when you're the president of the Inn. And that is that this program is going to be at Georgia State. No, you're not going to have to do anything. The idea is it's close to you, just like Georgia State is close to Judge Bonifel. And the approach is going to be we're going to get the law clerks, we're going to get the pupils at Georgia State and their mentors to put together that program, which is what a lot of the other inns around the country do. And then the last program we're going to have is going to be either June 1 or June 8, which will be our annual dinner, which will be in Atlanta. And David Wender and I haven't picked a place yet, but we're working on it. And pick a date too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I only have one other thing to say before we start serving the entrees, and that is with regard to the golf. There was not there was originally enough interest, but we didn't get enough people to actually have a tournament. So we have 2 tee times at 9:09, does that sound right, 9:18, at the Harbor Club, which is just right across the street here. And they have very good sets of clubs that can be rented. So you need to be over there at the Harbor Club before 9 if you want to play golf. And I think we have at least 5 or 6. I think my husband, Carl Pettigo, may fill in and play. And so, but we got those 2 tee times reserved. And so I hope you have fun with your golf. All right, well, I'm going to sit down and eat and let you eat, and then I'll introduce the speaker prior to our dessert. Thank you. Okay, we are ready for our speaker. Sitting at my table, there was some conversation about apparently there was some conversation outside of the bar about who it might be. And I was so intrigued with some of the guesses, and I just wanted to share some of them. Vince Dooley, David Perdue, Sonny Perdue, Paula Dean, Clarence Thomas, and my personal favorite, James Comey. I have to confess, been hiding 6'8" James Comey over here in the corner. But turning serious now with regard to our speaker, I apologize for the secrecy, but one issue was security for the speaker, who will join us as soon as I introduce him. I don't need to remind you that in our country today, there's a good bit of rancor, there's a good bit of partisanship, there are feelings of division within our country, and emotions are frequently running high these days. There have been times when our speaker has actually been accused of stirring these emotions, I confess. Some have even called him a rabble-rouser. Like us, he's a lawyer, but he's also a politician who believes strongly in liberty, and he believes strongly in limited government. I frankly am not sure that everybody in the room shares his beliefs. I realize I am breaking with tradition and bringing in a political speaker, but the Inn is very honored to have a man of his stature address our group. He comes to us from the Commonwealth of Virginia, where he has served as a state representative and twice served as governor. I am very, very excited and proud to introduce you to Patrick Henry.
Good evening. Good evening. To start with, I wanted a show of hands. How many of you are not from Georgia? All right, now where are we from? Indiana. I don't know where that is. Yes, sir. What's that? Virginia. All right, I'll be back there in a minute. All right, we have, I don't know where that is. And where else? We had a couple of hands over here. You're an American. Jersey. Excellent. New York. I was born in Miami. All right, well, all of you, the Texans and other places that I don't know, welcome to America. Wow, it's a tough room. All right, so to begin with, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. Those of you have heard a wonderful introduction saying that I am a lawyer. Yes, I am a lawyer and a politician. As far as that, the questions I get the most often is, how did I become the lawyer that I am today? And this is a nice, small story I would like to indulge with you today. To begin with, my minister, my Reverend, Samuel Davies, he was a very well-spoken individual and a very fiery sermon preacher. He would do these sermons in such a way, acting them out and entertaining us. And for friends and family that could not attend church, my friends and family would ask me to repeat or to mimic what I had learned on these sermons and these Sundays. Unbeknownst to myself, as I was growing up, this was how I would become the orator that I am today, by mimicking these speeches over and over and over again. Including that in my own personal speeches by bringing that fire, that passion to my own orations. Now, I did grow up in Hanover County. I was born in a little place called Studley, Virginia, inside Hanover. It was in Hanover that I would actually learn law. Now, I wasn't able to go to college because when I was first married, one of our houses would burn down to the ground. With nowhere to stay, we moved into the Shelton Tavern, which was directly across the street from the Hanover Courthouse. While I was there, I went to the courthouse on a regular basis to watch the cases, to watch all of the proceedings. It also helps that my father was the presiding judge at the Hanover Courthouse. I picked up books because I could not afford to go to college. I read both day and night. I became a self-taught lawyer. I was able to pass the Virginia bar and able to practice law in the 1760s. Now, I point that out because you have to understand what was going on at that time. We went through the French and Indian War. With this war, the king and the parliament are enacting all these laws. Some of them are on the books and have never been enforced. Some of them are brand new. These laws were very taxing for all of us. And I would argue and fight against the majority of these laws, the Stamp Act, the Intolerable Act. But what I would find, because I am the orator that people know me to be, I would be elected as a representative of Hanover County and as a delegate to the House of Burgesses. The House of Burgesses in 1774 was still run by the royal appointed governor of Virginia, Lord Dunmore. And you must understand that every governor before myself was a royal appointed governor. They didn't grow up in Virginia. They didn't live in Virginia until they were appointed. Lord Dunmore decided that he did not like the mood of the body because everyone was moving toward revolution. He decided to disband the House of Burgesses, leaving Virginia with no effective government. In this somber time, the leaders of Virginia got together inside Williamsburg. Williamsburg is 50 miles from Richmond. And they elected a body, for the most part, that was pro-patriots, to meet in Richmond, in the largest building that was able to hold 120 delegates from all across the colony of Virginia. Inside this church, you know it today as St. John's Church. We knew it as Henrico Parish Church. These members gathered in the Second Virginia Convention in order to determine whether or not we should arm and prepare Virginia for a conflict that we knew was coming. Now, I must pause here for a moment in my storytelling to tell you that the vote was extremely close. It only passed, some say, by 4 votes. Others say upwards of 7 or 8 votes. We don't know exactly because we didn't keep an accurate count. In fact, we did a division of the House. There were so many ayes and so many noes that we actually had everyone stand up and go to one side of the room or the other, and we counted to see which number was larger. That is the division of the House. We found that this vote did barely pass to arm Virginia against our own king. Colonel Washington was there that day when he heard me speak. When he voted, he had a resolution in his pocket already to arm and organize the militia of Virginia and the surrounding colonies to send them up north to New England. All we needed to do was pass the vote. I was only 38 years old at the time of that speech, just a couple of months away from my 39th birthday. And I was asked to speak because they knew I would do it. I had been speaking and arguing against the tyranny of a king for over 12 years. And it was only natural that this speech came to me. Now, another question that I always get, did I write it down? And I can honestly tell you, none of the speakers in that convention for 5 full days wrote down any of their speeches. If they did, they wrote down portions of their speeches, not the entire speech itself. And most of those speeches are lost to us today. So, without any further ado, if I can have your blessing, I'd like to give you that speech today. Will you indulge me? I urge you to keep in mind, this vote did sway a number of votes. This speech was the pinnacle in this particular argument. Maybe it will sway your vote today. No man thinks more highly than I do of the patriotism, as well as the abilities of the very worthy gentlemen who have just addressed the House. But different men often see the same subject in different lights. And though I hope it's not disrespectful to those gentlemen, if entertaining, as I do, opinions of a character very opposite to theirs, I shall speak forth my sentiments freely and without reserve. This is no time for ceremony. The question before the House is one of awful moment to our country. For my part, I consider it nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. And in proportion to the magnitude of the subject ought to be the freedom of this debate. It is only in this way that we can hope to arrive at the truth, to fulfill the great responsibility which we owe to God and to our country. Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense? I should consider myself guilty of treason to my country and of an act of disloyalty to the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. Mr. President, it is natural for man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and to listen to the song of the siren until she transforms us into beasts. But is this the part of wise men, engaged in a long and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, or having ears, hear not, those things which so nearly concern our temporal salvation? For my part, whatever anguish of the spirit it may cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know of no way of judging the future, but by the past. And I would like to know what there has been in the conduct of the British ministry for the last 10 years to justify those hopes with which the gentlemen are so pleased to solace themselves and this house. Could it be that insidious smile to which our petition have been so lately received? Trust it not, sir. It will prove a snare unto your feet. Suffer not yourselves to be betrayed with a kiss. Ask yourselves how this gracious reception of our petitions comports with these warlike preparations which cover our waters and darken our lands. Are fleets and armies necessary to a work of love and reconciliation? Have we shown ourselves so unwilling to be reconciled that force must be called in to win back our love? Let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. And I ask, gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array if its purpose be not to force us into submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motive for it? Has Great Britain any enemy in this quarter of the world to call for all this accumulation of armies and navies? No, sir, she has none. They are meant for us. They can be meant for no other. They are sent over to bind and to rivet upon us those chains which the British ministry have been so long forging. And what have we to oppose them? Shall we try argument? Sir, we've been trying that for the last 10 years. Have we anything new to offer upon the subject? Nothing. We have held the subject up in every light of which it is capable, and it has all been in vain. Shall we resort to entreaty and humble supplications? But what terms shall we find which have not already been exhausted? Let us not, I beseech you, sir, deceive ourselves any further. We have done everything which can be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned. We have remonstrated. We have supplicated. We have prostrated ourselves before the throne and implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the British ministry and of Parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. In vain, after all of these things, may we indulge in the fond hope of peace and reconciliation, or to expect relief from a king who has become a tyrant, a fool, a puppet, a tool to the ministry, nor can hope be vested any longer in the British people. There are no Englishmen, no Scots, no Britons, only a set of wretches, cowards, sunk in luxury, who have lost their natural courage and who can no longer look the brave Americans in the face. There is no longer any room for hope. If we wish to be free, if we wish to preserve inviolate those inestimable rights and liberties for which we've been so long contending, if we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle for which we've been so long engaged, and which we pledged ourselves never to abandon until that glorious object of our contest be obtained, then we must fight. I repeat it, sir, we must fight. An appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all that is left of us. They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so formidable an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Shall it be in the next week? The next year? Shall it be when we are totally disarmed and a British guard is stationed in every house? Shall we gather strength through irresolution and inaction? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs, hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemies have bound and shackled us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak. If we make use of those means which the God of nature has placed in our power, 3 millions of people, armed in the noble cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess, are invincible against any force our enemies may send against us. Besides, sir, we have no election. If we were base enough to desire it, it is already too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, let it come. It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it the gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
This was not scripted. This is, some of you actually met him when you came in. This is Mr. Charles Wissinger, and he is from Richmond, Virginia, and he does this a lot, and this is only one of a number of characters he does. He does not do this. This is not his day job. But he does pretty darn good, considering it's not his day job. But I would ask him to share a little bit about who he is on his when he's not Patrick Henry. Or maybe Patrick Henry. You tell me.
Like she said, my name is Charles Wissinger. Thank you very much for having me to begin with. I am a full-time actor. I work in movies, industrials, commercials, as much as I can possibly do. When I'm not doing that, I also do a lot with history, especially historic figures. I educate through entertainment. I take historic figures across the nation, from James Madison, the Marquis de Lafayette, Major John Andre, Benjamin Franklin Stringfellow, sometimes Patrick Henry, Audie Murphy, Francis Scott Key. So you know Audie Murphy. All right. It's not. But I feel his story needs to be told. So this is what I do on a regular basis. When I'm not doing that, I also am at St. John's Church doing the reenactment of Patrick Henry's speech. It's a 9-person cast. We sit in with the audience in the church where Patrick gave the speech. That way we can argue over you, and you feel like you were actually there. Then Patrick gives his speech, and then everybody votes. So at this point, everybody would probably vote. And I hope that it passes. So in addition to that, I also work with a group, and I'm becoming the director of Richmond Discoveries. It's a tour group that goes to historic spots all over Richmond and highlights the museums as well as markers and the historic events that make Richmond really what it is. So that is what I do. I'm a full-time actor. All right, so at this point, I guess, do we have time for questions? Does anybody have questions about anything I've told them?
Who's your favorite historical character?
Lafayette, Edgar Allan Poe, and Benjamin Franklin Stringfellow. Those are the most fun to do because Lafayette is just such a charming individual. Edgar Allan Poe, so weird, but actually he is a charming and very funny individual as well. And then with Benjamin Franklin Stringfellow, he's the spy that they said the most dangerous man in the Confederacy. So that's really fun and entertaining. All right, I could probably take a couple more questions. Yes, sir?
The reference to Audie Murphy, the most decorated American
Well, I tell his story, especially the Medal of Honor. So I would spend, in most of my presentations, I'm given 45 minutes to an hour. And so with that, I go into a small biography, but then I detail the Medal of Honor event where he actually did hold off the Germans almost single-handedly and then wins that award. Yes, sir?
Clearly, a lot of historical research of a lot of Patrick Henry. What's the definitive biography, in your opinion, on Patrick Henry? If you want to do some more research.
There are so many out there. I don't know which one is the definitive one, but I can honestly point you to the first one and two others. The first one, William Wirt. And the reason why I point him out is because he went around to the surviving delegates and asked them what was in that speech. What did he say at that time? So he has the most accurate speech for the Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death. Now, there are historical thoughts that say that he spoke for 3, 4, 5 hours before they finally got to the Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death, and then they voted on it. But we don't know that for sure. The speech that I gave you, you can read it in about 7 to 8 minutes. You can act it out in about 10 to 15 minutes. Right. Thank goodness it's only 10, 15 minutes. You don't want to hear 3 hours of me talking. So yeah. Right. That one is the William Wirt version with a couple of changes, and one of the changes that we do have is from the only surviving document that we just recently, and I do mean recent, like in the 70s, found a letter from a loyalist who was standing outside the window of St. John's Church who actually heard and then questioned how could somebody call the king a tyrant, a fool, a puppet, a tool to the ministry, because he was so offended by that phrase. That one goes verbatim into the middle of our speech, because we know that it's accurate. All right, I think I can take maybe one more. Yes?
One
maybe?
more, yeah.
If we have one more. Yes, sir?
How have you chosen the characters that you portray?
The first one was actually given to me. My former boss, who has passed away, was 6'2", and he played George Washington, and he's so much older than me, it was almost a perfect match. I played James Madison. Because of the height difference, because of the age difference, there was almost a 16-year age difference between Madison and Washington. And it was perfect for us coming from Virginia to actually have the height and the age look when I started doing this. Some of the others, it came either Audie Murphy, I was cast in a American Heroes Channel Medal of Honor TV show as Audie Murphy, and then I fell in love with him, and then I figured out, you know what, this story needs to be told. So on July 4th, I'm actually going to be at Meadow Farms doing Audie Murphy for this year. Let's see, some of the other ones I've either been cast, like as Edgar Allan Poe. I was cast in a History Channel documentary as Edgar Allan Poe, and then I realized I looked like him when I put the mustache on. And then that was one of those that I fell into. Some of the others were given to me, like Francis Scott Key. There was a need. No one was doing it in Virginia because he's not a Virginian. Right? So, all right. Well, thank you very much for having me. If you do have any other questions that I haven't gotten to, please ask me after we're done.
Right.
I'll hang
now you
out.
can eat your dessert. And before I forget it, you know, the bar outside will reopen after dinner and have cordials too. And it's a complimentary bar for 1 hour. After that, it's on you. Thank you very much. You know, I did have James Comey calling me and wanting to appear, but I told him we had somebody much better. And now I will call on Judge Jim Smith, the only person I know of who can follow Patrick Henry.
I remember a number of years ago, I had a trial in Sly County, and the great orator Garland Byrd was my opponent. And when he got through with his closing argument, I went, my God, what in the hell am I going to say now? So now I get to follow Patrick Henry. Thank you. Well, I want to talk to you about participation. You have heard at the beginning when Mr. Kay read Judge Barrett's statement about the mission of the ends of court, which is to, quote, to promote a legal profession and judiciary dedicated to professionalism, ethics, civility, and excellence. I told this story at our table earlier. I remember the third day I was practicing at the old firm of Kaplan, Thomason, and Stone. It was Kaplan, Thomason. Ward was just still a little associate with me. We had a huge case, and we had the CEO, we were interviewing the CEO about a particular issue, and it was very critical when he knew a particular fact. And the entire case rose or fell on when he knew this fact. And Ward and my senior partner, Jerry Kaplan, looked at him and said, well, Mr. Client, when did you know this? And the client looked at Jerry and went, when do you want me to know it? And, I was 3 days out of law school, and I'm sitting there going, wow, And Jerry goes, no. That's not the way we play this game. You're going to testify truthfully and honestly and completely. And it was just, as a young lawyer, it just dawned on me that all this stuff about ethics that I had heard about in law school and professionalism, it was real. And, Ward and I and some of the younger guys in the back, we were very fortunate to have a mentor like Jerry Kaplan to mentor and bring us up to meet this goal of professionalism, ethics, civility, and excellence. And I can personally look out on this audience and see there are a lot of people here who I have interacted with either as a private practicing attorney or as a judge, and I know that you practice at that level, that everything you do is at the highest level. And that's something that we all strive for, and that's the mission of the ends of court. But I'm here tonight to encourage you to participate, to promote that for the younger generation, because it's not ingrained, okay? You don't grow up with it. You have to learn it. And someone's got to teach you. And the only way that the younger generation is going to learn is from us, the older generation. And so I really encourage you to participate. Attend the events. Grant's coming up with a great program from next year. Try to be at these events. Be there. Meet these younger lawyers. Tell them who you are. Explain to them what it means to practice at this high level. Volunteer your time. Participate. If you're asked to be a speaker, please participate, okay? You have a lot of knowledge that needs to be shared with these younger lawyers. And that's something that's just a treasure. And so if you're asked to participate as a speaker at an event, please agree to do it. We have a pro bono and a community outreach committee. Volunteer for that. Be an example. Alex Sanders and Jim Drake, they're the co-chairs of our mentoring program for the law school. Sign up for that. Say, if there's an event and there are going to be some law students there, I will be their sponsor. I will be there to introduce them to the other members of the bar, to the judges. Maybe we'll go out to dinner afterwards. Be there for them. If encourage them and give them hints about employment opportunities. That's what it means to be part of this end. It's not just to come to these dinners and just to say, on my resume, I've got an ends of court. It's a participant. Be a participant, and let's make this the strongest possible profession we can be. Okay? Thank you.
All right, we're going to end now with closing comments and adjournment by your new leaders. Judge Paul Bonifel and Grant Stein, who is the new counselor.
We better be careful, the light may shine off our heads.
Yeah, we may blind a few folks.
You gonna
You're
have the
right.
last word, or you want me?
As you decide, Your Honor. Either
Why
way.
don't you go ahead
All right.
with that, then?
The leadership that we've had the past year has been outstanding. And I think the best evidence of that is the room. We've got a full room in a wonderful environment here in Savannah. And Kathy, thank you. It's been a joy and a pleasure for me personally. And for everyone else to respond to the leadership that you have shown this year. I talked to Ward, I said, what do we do? What do we get? And Ward said, I got it for you. And this is what he got, and I think it's absolutely lovely. We have one for you, and we have one for Judge Barrett that basically says, thank you for what you've done for this past year, where you can have it in your office where everyone that comes in can see it and see what you've done for us. So thank you. If you'd come up, let me give this to you.
Oh, it's heavy.
Oh, it's very heavy. Yeah. And Ben, for Judge Barrett, if you would deliver, I appreciate it. Your Honor.
I realize that I am keeping you from the bar. It occurred to me as I was listening to, would it be Governor Henry? Governor Henry, and to Judge Smith. What we're really doing and what this is really all about comes from another of Governor Henry's colleagues. You may remember President Adams, John Adams. And John Adams said, I may be paraphrasing, a civilized society cannot exist without lawyers. And what that carries with it is that the most precious thing we have in this country, the freedom that Governor Henry talked about, is the rule of law. And the rule of law depends on the lawyers who are there to advocate and to protect the rights of the citizens. And that's really what we're all about. And we're about an independent judiciary which has to have competent lawyers in order to function. And that's why Chief Justice Berger founded the Inns of Court, was to encourage professionalism and integrity among lawyers. And Judge Smith's comment about the honesty and the professionalism of Jerry Kaplan, people in the world, in the real world, don't really realize that. They really don't. But that's what happens all the time. We know it, and that's what the rule of law depends on. It depends on the lawyers, and the lawyers have to be there. You can make your own judgments about current events, about where the lawyers are. But I'm confident that they're there. So, and then finally, I know I'm keeping you from the bar, but this really is important in bankruptcy because the judiciary and the rule of law depends on public acceptance of it. And as you all know, the federal court that a citizen of the United States is most likely to have contact with is a United States bankruptcy court. That's where the citizens of the United States see the judiciary in action. And it is you who make that happen. And so when you're going to that 341 meeting, or you're representing your creditor trying to take the car away from the debtor, whatever you do, the point is you are a part, and we are a part of this rule of law, and it's very important. I appreciate it. The courts appreciate it. And thank you for what you do. And as Judge Smith has said, let's work during this coming year to help younger lawyers understand that heritage and that obligation. Anything else? Grant, you're in charge. Anything else? I order everyone to go have a drink.